So this is actually a news story that I saw via Trust Archive on Instagram. This is something I think people are talking about on Reddit as well. People have been talking about it a lot. But essentially, Loic Demna's husband actually posted a fit pic where he was wearing archive Gucci from Tom Ford's era. Now, the interesting thing about this is he deleted this fit pic shortly after, and now knowing Demna and knowing that Demna loves a social stunt, Demna loves to play with our minds and do all this crazy marketing stuff. I definitely think it's deliberate. It was definitely a deliberate thing. It wasn't sort of like a mistake as they're trying to play it out to be. I don't think it was that. And so it's kind of Demna teasing that, he's looking at the archives, he's really interested in the Tom Ford era, and that will definitely be a focus, moving forward as far as his Gucci goes. And now it really made me think, because I think that, and not saying Demna's husband gives vampire, that's crazy. But on a different note, something that I find really interesting about this, right, is the fact that there seems to be this constant obsession with Tom Ford at Gucci. Now, I understand why that's the case. I am a big fan of Tom Ford. I love his time at Gucci as well. But I think we can start thinking from Alessandro Michele, right? The reason why Alessandro Michele left Gucci is because the Gucci execs felt like the reason why their sales started to slow down was because the consumer audience and market was shifting to this sort of quiet luxury, stealth wealth aesthetic. And Alessandro Michele's work is basically the antithesis of that. So they were trying to push him into designing in a way that was more in lieu with what you would expect from Tom Ford himself, right? They probably expected that from Alessandro. They probably thought he could do it because Alessandro has been at Gucci since Tom Ford, if you didn't know, and he was actually designing accessories when Tom Ford was the creative director of Gucci. So Alessandro obviously felt like that wasn't his aesthetic and he didn't want to design in a way that wasn't his aesthetic. So he left and they hired Sabato, who, for no fault of his own, kind of was under the spell of the Gucci execs, because at the end of the day, Sabato was not really a no-name in fashion. He wasn't a big name designer like the Alessandro Micheles, the J.W. Andersons of the world. So he didn't really have that much say in what happened. And if you look at the clothing that he put out, and I actually quite like a lot of what Sabato was doing. I just think as far as strategy from a branding and merchandising standpoint, just didn't make any sense. They kind of wanted him to do the Tom Ford thing. But the problem with that is you have to think of, why do people like Tom Ford's Gucci? It's not just about making clothing that is minimal. I mean, I can go on a long, maybe I will, because I'm back on the stream, so I'm going to talk for a long time. But there's so many reasons why people love Tom Ford's Gucci, right? It's the sex that he was selling, the overt sexuality. It was at a time in fashion that was dominated by quote unquote minimalism, the Helmut Langs of the world, the Calvin Kleins, the Jill Sanders. That was what was really big at the time. And Gucci offered still kind of like a minimal aesthetic, but it was more sexy and it had more flair and it was more fun. And it was just, more playful in a way. So that was kind of one reason why people love Tom Ford's Gucci. So you have to think of time and place, which a lot of these execs always forget. They just think, just recreate that. And it's like, yeah, but what about, the current society, and what is the clothing like? And how does that differ compared to back then? So that's one thing. Obviously, his designs were pushing the sexiness, the low slung trousers, the crazy necklines, the silks and the satins that I always love. Even in this video that you're seeing on the screen, you can see a lot of silks and satins on the runway. The way that they would be styled, a lot of like unbuttoning the buttons. Like, look at the styling for that example. Like, look at where the buttons are, how low they've been unbuttoned, right? There's just a certain sexiness, and he was kind of really referencing this sort of 1970s glamour and reworking it for the 90s and the 2000s, right? I think that was something that was really appealing about Tom Ford's Gucci. So you can't, if you're not going to recreate that whole energy, you can't really recreate Tom Ford's Gucci. It's not enough to just have the aesthetic and be like, yeah, this is going to be Tom Ford. So that's why I think Sabato De Sarno's Gucci fell flat. It wasn't any of his own. I think it was the execs that just had the wrong idea completely, and they didn't really know what they were doing, to be honest, and they're just making him do stuff that didn't make sense. Like, it's just, there's so many elements to Tom Ford. I mean, I talk about this all the time, right? The ads, the crazy ads, stuff like the belts and the topless, it looks like he's about to take his belt off, you know, people lying down in sexy poses, the pube, the like models kissing and stuff, basically like damn near very erotic and sexual images. Like, this is literally what Tom Ford was doing, right? So once again, you can't just have plain bland clothing and be like, yeah, it's Tom Ford. That's not going to make sense. It's never going to work. It just never will work, right? Even Tom Ford, right? He talks a lot about in interviews. He's like, when I was in like college, and then I met like Andy Warhol, and I was at Studio 54 and all that sort of stuff. And I think he was very inspired by that. I think that's why his work is very sexy by nature. Even the aesthetic and the lifestyle around Tom Ford. Tom Ford is a really attractive guy. He's known as someone that was a party buff. That's why Hyder Ackerman, in his Tom Ford debut, literally said that Tom Ford is the night and I am the morning after. So there's a certain, you know, lifestyle that comes with Tom Ford, the jet set lifestyle, the glamour. So the slick hair, the smoky eyes. It's just you can't recreate that with just clothing alone. And I hope that Gucci execs moving forward understand that. Now, going back to Demna, Demna is smart enough to know that. So I'm expecting Demna not to necessarily copy Tom Ford, but to kind of channel his own sort of aesthetic and his own sensibilities using Tom Ford's tropes and odes, which would be cool because I really want to know how he does that. We've seen in the interviews, and I've reported on this before, that Demna himself said that he's completely going away from the Balenciaga aesthetic and he's doing something completely new at Gucci. So we won't be seeing a lot of the grunge aesthetic and the punk stuff and everything being black and models walking on a mud runway. We're not going to be seeing that. So I'm very, very curious to know what direction he goes in. Is Demna going to make his grandmother's kitchen tablecloth sexy? Jeez. I think that philosophy of things, I think though, Demna is going in a different direction entirely, is my understanding. So yeah, we'll have to see about that one, to be very honest with you. Honestly, the Balenciaga stuff really got to ground and into dust. I'm so tired of it. Yeah, I saw someone make a comment that was kind of true when I made a YouTube short about this. Someone said that they don't think that Demna can really reference a lot of the sexy nature of what Tom Ford does, because one of the reasons why Balenciaga ended up having a bad end when Demna was there was because of, you know, the controversy with the kids and stuff. And so he can't really lean into sexy stuff because there's a lot of people already that are like, why did Demna get the job? Demna should be cancelled, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, if he wants to stay under the radar and avoid people bringing that up constantly, he can't really make things that are too sexy, and he definitely can't advertise it in his campaigns, to be very honest. There's a pretty sizable Demna fan base that will follow him anywhere, so I think his first collection should sell decently well, though I doubt it will make the turnaround shareholders want. Yeah, I think it just depends, to be honest. But I think that, yeah, do you guys think that Demna, let me ask you guys this question. Do you guys think that Demna has the cult following, the level of like Eddie Simon, where Eddie Simon goes to Dior, he goes to Yves Saint Laurent, he goes to Celine, and all of them make crazy money? Do you think that Demna has that kind of power? Because we've really only seen him at his own brand, Vetements, and then at Balenciaga. So as a creative director, obviously he's been at Louis Vuitton and Margiela and all these brands as a designer, but do you guys think he has that same pull? Can he pull his customers there and cause them to, you know, sell that much? Okay, David is saying Demna does not. Yeah, I would agree. Although it's to be seen. We'll only know when we see what he does with Gucci. I was kind of hoping for more fabric innovations for his time at Gucci, but Tom Ford as future makes that seem unlikely. Hate Gucci's quality. Do you know something I will say though? When Sabato de Sarno was at Gucci, the quality wasn't that bad. At least the runaway stuff. I don't know about, and this is where maybe is my issue, because I'm more interested in what goes on the runway. So I, you know, talk to the team and I want to see the runway stuff all the time, and I like feel the garments and stuff, inspect the garments. But the permanent collection stuff and the stuff that's just in any store, I don't know. It's probably trash quality because runway stuff is probably made in their better factories. And, permanent collection stuff is made in, wherever. He has powerful fans and friends like Kim Kardashian and Carti. I don't know. Okay, interesting. Eddie's a little more timeless, strange to say. Demna feels locked into a time and place. I think, do you know what it is with Demna? I think Eddie Simon's aesthetic is definitely timeless, but more timeless than Demna. I think with Demna, though, he has range. Like, if I'm going to be fair to him, because I am a Demna fan, and like looking at through his collections, yes, at the end, he did go a bit too grunge and a bit too dark. But early on, he showed a lot of range. He was doing everything from making couture level dresses to bringing those couture sensibilities and making cocoon shaped puffer jackets. So I think he has a lot more range. I think that range just kind of disappeared later on in his Balenciaga tenure, probably because they were making so much money and the merchandisers were like, no, we just need this trouser in black and this sold really well, so can you remake it for this season and that sort of stuff. So he kind of was jaded by the end of it, and you could see that he was jaded. On my Patreon, I've reviewed the interview that he did with Kathy Horan called Rethinking Luxury. Really good interview. I did point out a lot of inconsistencies with what both of them were saying, but when you watch that interview, if you haven't, you see that Demna is kind of at odds with himself in terms of where he sits and what his role is in fashion. So yeah, that's that. But yeah, I just thought it was a very interesting story. The fact that, he's really looking into the Tom Ford archives. This is kind of like the main and the first main teaser we have in terms of what the direction of Demna's Gucci will look like. So looking forward to it. Definitely looking forward to it. Michael says Demna needs to build his repertoire a little bit more. Demna and Eddie are in two different leagues, in my opinion. Yeah. Also, Eddie Simon has just been around for longer, so his body of work is a lot more broad. Also, the thing about Eddie Simon is that, and obviously I'm a huge Eddie Simon fan, as all of you know, but the thing about Eddie Simon is that he can do things that Demna has never even done. So like Eddie Simon has started fragrance lines almost everywhere he's been, and they've been some of the most successful fragrance lines in all of fashion, right? Demna has never launched a successful fragrance line, and that's like a big money maker. Like Eddie Simon did Dior Privé, Eddie Simon did the Celine fragrance line. So even when it comes to commerce, I think Eddie Simon is better at world building than Demna, because Eddie Simon can make every kind of product and fit it into his world. It's why he's so, what's the word? He's so specific on controlling everything when he's creative director. That's why at Celine, Eddie Simon was like, I'm going to do the photography and I'm going to do the fragrance line and I'm going to do the marketing, and like, because he has to create the whole world in a 360 way. The next Phoebe drop references New Jack City and Demna's referencing Tom Ford. Make it mix. Gucci has a huge archive to work with and has a lot of resources. Should be an easier job than Balenciaga. Yes, also, and we fall into this issue a lot of times when we talk about Gucci. What actually is Gucci? Like, if we were to say what the aesthetic of Gucci is, what really is that? I don't even know what the aesthetic of Gucci is, if I'm going to be honest with you. I have no idea, because everyone has gone there and done something different. Whether that's Frida Giannini, Tom Ford, Alessandro Michele, Sabato de Sarno, like everyone has done something different. So there's no real house code of Gucci, unless you want to, look at what Gucci was doing, and you talk about like horsebit loafers and, saddlery and luggage. But in terms of ready to wear, I don't think house codes really exist for Gucci, to be honest. A Gucci belt. Okay, Brooklyn said bamboo and equestrian. Yeah, that's more because the bamboo, like the bamboo bag, the first one they made, that was like Aldo Gucci era, no? So yeah, I guess in accessories there are a few codes there, but in terms of ready to wear, it's quite rare. Wagwan Dolce jeans. The only Gucci code is loafers and bamboo. Yeah, people get too sprung about the history of a luggage house. I think it means, why I'm asking that question is because Gucci doesn't really have that many cemented house codes compared to Balenciaga. It's easier to do your own thing and not be criticized for it. So I think Demna has more leeway, because when he was at Balenciaga, there were all those people that are like, oh, Cristobal Balenciaga's rolling in his grave and all that sort of stuff, right? Which I do find funny. It's like, oh my God, he's making jeans and putting it on a couture runway. how dare he? You know, there are those kind of people. But I don't think with Gucci that would ever be the case. Apart from the Tom Ford head, to just be like, it doesn't look like Tom Ford, therefore it's trash. You have those people too. I don't know why people might be surprised by this. He doesn't really have anything else to work with. Yeah, that's kind of what we were alluding to earlier. It's rolling as soon as they revived his house, regardless. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, guys, that's the whole shebang on Demna and Tom Ford. This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind-the-scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club, where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.